Stage 3 has wrapped in NA and EU, Korea has become a betting man's nightmare, and the FaceIt League is absolutely ruining my power rankings. Hey folks, my name is Apostle, and welcome to Watching Overwatch, or WoW, the scuffed but quick way to get the rundown on what's happening in Overwatch Esports. Because as we all know, Overwatch Esports can be hard to follow sometimes, so welcome to this new series where I try to go over everything worth mentioning in the scene without having to listen to 2-hour-long podcasts or dig through tons of Twitter accounts or Wikipedia pages. All my info is community sourced though, so big thanks to all the dedicated fans in the scene. Alright, now let's jump into it, and do keep in mind there are spoilers ahead for a lot of matches. So OWCS Stage 3 has just finished, so let's talk about what happened there. Starting with the EU, we'll work our way up as we actually had some notable upsets happen. GG who have historically been EU mainstays, actually got denied entry by the young upstarts of a one-man army and Super Shy, with Super Shy taking the game in a map 5 banger. Make sure you remember that, by the way. The first round of the bracket went as expected, with SSG, VP, ENTS, and Twisted Minds all getting a clean 3-0s. But after that is where things got interesting. Super Shy actually fell in what I would say is an upset to Hypnos, which you may recognize as being MCD's team. And honestly, MCD looked pretty good, but the rest of the team, they were just on fire. It didn't last long though, as SSG took them out with a 3-1, and then proceeded to do the same to Twisted Minds. Now for a lot of us this may seem expected, as SSG and the London core are kind of seen as the best of EU, right? But it was actually Virtus Pro who handed out a beatdown, knocking them into the lower with a 3-2 and then finishing them off with a 3-0 in the lower final. Now, maybe this is because SSG are fraudulent on anything other than Rush, or maybe VP is just cracked, who can say. Either way though, the real top dogs are ENTS, who went through the bracket without dropping a single map until the grand final against VP, and even then only dropped 2 maps total. Kevster and Kai continue to be freaks of nature, and they'll likely continue to terrorize EU for the foreseeable future. Now, in NA, there are 2 specific teams I want to give big props to, the first being Timeless Ethereal. Any fans of Calling All Heroes will be familiar with this team, and the rest of the world will be soon enough at this rate, as after securing top 8 in the tournament, they've become the first ever all-women and NB team to do so. I think this really shows what kind of talent you can get fostered in a league like Calling All Heroes, and it's such a positive thing, not only for the scene as a whole, but for the individual players. That's got to be such great motivation to keep going, so that's absolutely a group you want to keep your eye on. Now, the other team is Fluffy Dreamland, who despite their appearance actually made it to the main event with wins over Shikigami and Citrus, and then in the main event, they beat Timeless Ethereal and took a map off Nightmare. Now, these are all very, very good teams, so even though Fluffy Dreamland is kind of a newer name, there are definitely some rising stars here that you'll want to keep an eye on. The real news, though, is Toronto, who just like SSG have finally been dethroned after they got reverse swept by NRG in the upper, and they just barely won a map 5 against Nightmare in the lower. So NRG are the new kings of NA. Or that's what we'd like to say. As it turns out, Toronto were just sandbagging and making us think the region was close, only to go and absolutely curb stomp the finals in a 4-0 that was somehow even more of a gap than the scoreline would imply. So sorry, NA fans, everyone is still fighting for second place at the moment. It really sucks that we got robbed of Nightmare versus NRG though, because that game would have been so sick. Right, now let's talk about Asia. First in Pacific, Stage 2 has just wrapped there, and while it may be less complicated than NA or EU, it was still a great time. Bleed Esports, formerly DAF, after losing Stage 1 to Honeypot, they've now solidified themselves as the top team there. Now, early this stage, things were a little shaky, as they had just lost clear to NA, and they actually lost their first matchup against 99 Divine in the bracket, but they held strong to get a close win over Full House in an amazing 3-2, Full House being Who Are You's team, and I mean, I guess they should have benched him if they wanted to win, am I right? And then they went and got revenge on 99 with a 4-2 in the finals, so unfortunately, Color Hex and Soggy weren't quite able to get the carry this time, but still. Big props to Bleed Esports, as they are now looking like the team to beat for Pacific, and I'm sure we'll see a great showing from them. But with that, Bleed Esports and 99 both made it to the main event, while ironically, Full House is actually in the wildcard spot. Now in Korea, things have been pretty wild over there, so let's break it down. First, let's establish that in the group stage, Pokerface lost to Falcons and Zeta Division, and Zeta Division beat Falcons. Pretty straightforward. Well, now in the seeding decider matches, Pokerface has beaten Falcons and Zeta, and then Zeta lost the rematch to Falcons, so the standings seem completely reversed. And if that wasn't enough, Crazy Raccoon, who just came off getting a perfect standing in groups, 0 maps dropped, they played against Zeta, who are now the 4th place team. How do you think that went? Well, if you said a 3-0, you are completely wrong. It was a map 5 banger at a 3-2. So yeah, Crazy Raccoons, they are still the best right now, but the rest of top 4 is practically RNG with how these teams are trading games with each other. Some of it is explainable though, as Falcons have been experimenting with subbing Stalker out a little bit, though I think they've finally realized that you gotta keep that guy in. Meanwhile, Zeta have been trying to play a lot of Juno, as while Juno was banned in NA and EU, she's fair game with WDG's rules. It hasn't gotten them a win yet, but it has brought them to map 5 3 times in as many days. So maybe they're cooking, they just gotta figure out how to bring it home. And then Pokerface, they're just all peaking at the right time. We've all talked about the theoretical peaks of these players, right? Choi on a good team, Proud after he gets more experience, and Belos Rhea when he doesn't throw. And lo and behold, their peaks are now being proven. Every single one of them is looking incredible. In some more straightforward news, Hajakdan and Fnatic were able to make it through the last chance qualifiers. Fnatic, though, it seems to me like they're just desperately scrambling to stay afloat, but Hajakdan are actually looking like a pretty good dark horse candidate, which I mean shouldn't be a huge surprise, right? Because we know how good their players can be. It's just a matter of them being able to put it together. But yeah, long story short, in Korea, always bet on Crazy Raccoons. Otherwise, good luck. Now in Japan, Varel is still looking like the top dog after beating Insomnia in the decider matches, with this being their second Map 5 win over them. The real shock is that Lazuli were actually also able to take a win over Insomnia, despite the fact that they previously got 3-0'd in the groups. So despite it being a growing region, it seems like it's only a matter of time before we start getting some really intriguing storylines being built there, and I'm excited to see how that plays out. Alright, now we gotta talk about FaceIt League Season 2, as the regular season has just wrapped and there are some shocking things here when you compare it to OWCS. Firstly, Defiant, Nightmare, and Shock opted not to compete, which means the top 8 had room for some extra appearances, namely in Vice, Shikigami, and Team Z, who all made groups in OWCS but failed to make the top 8. Players of Timeless Ethereal are also here, but they're competing under the name Green Fortnite. Now, results have been mostly as expected, with the most notable thing being Citrus, Nightmare, and Dreamland tied for third, after Citrus lost in a 3-0 fashion to Dreamland. And I gotta say, there is something kind of funny about a team called Dreamland beating a team that goes under Nightmare, right? In EU, though, we had all kinds of shakeups. Here, SSG, they actually look like they haven't missed a beat, only losing to ENCE, and they actually won their match against BP in a 3-0, which, keep in mind, was only like a week or two before OWCS. And then Ex Oblivione and GG are comfortably top 5, with a one-man army and Super Shy sitting just above cutoff, and it was actually Hypnos who failed to qualify, despite actually beating GG in a match. And you'll remember earlier how I mentioned EXO lost to Super Shy. Well, apparently they really didn't like that, because they came back and strolled them in an easy 3-0 the very next day. Also, we have Nuage serving as a handy little tier break, I'm sure in no small part due to China, who seems to have been active both on this roster and Vendetta in OWCS, who did fail to make it out of groups. Anyway, the stark difference between OWCS standings and the FaceIt standings makes it really hard to determine what the state of EU is right now, but when in doubt, we know ENCE is still going to be at the top, so... Now, looking forward, we do have some player status updates. Masa has now officially been released from ENCE, as despite Kellex being their starter, he was still on the roster until after Stage 3 finished. Now, according to sources, and by sources I mean Reddit comments, Masa has said he's not looking to compete anymore, and LH Cloudy has said he'll be sticking with Cronus for Stage 4, despite how much he would love to work with Masa. Of course, we thought Masa was retired even when he initially joined Owl Spray Check with Cloudy, so time will tell if he's out for good this time. Next, Faith, who's playing on Old Ocean along with Ryuje Hong, and that team failed to win a single game, by the way, unlucky. He's announced that he's also a free agent again. Now, the Korean teams are pretty generally set with their main supports, so he'd probably be the best fit on an NA or EU team, especially given because he's been on mixed rosters before. But with a mess of rule sets to navigate, it's probably unlikely that we'll see it happen, at least for Stage 4. Now, something cool for Japan is Nightmare has actually announced they'll be partnering with Ravati to add yet another team to their org. While this news itself was great, the Nightmare CEO also put forward a really interesting statement, saying his goal is to not only support Overwatch, but to kind of help shape it and extend that to the esports industry as a whole. Now, all I can say is that if he has the ability to support these teams and he's happy to do so, then, you know, I'm happy for it and I'm really excited to see what he's got up his sleeves. Yes, it is a lot of teams, but I mean, hey, Timeless has needed some competition when it comes to creating or signing cracked rosters. And some other very recent news, it was actually just announced that YFP will be partnering with Super Shy in order to field a Calling All Heroes roster. This roster is slightly different to the one that was run in OWCS, but still, I'm very excited to see how they're going to be able to perform. And I think the key here is that Hitori is still present. If you were able to watch the game, you'll know that Hitori was a huge presence on the field for Super Shy, so I think she'll be a really, really huge player on this team. In some more speculative news, though, users in the FaceIt League actually noticed a team playing under the name Dusty. This team has on its roster not one, but two legends from a bygone era. Fincy and Halfacool, both known as legends of the off-tank role, are on the roster, and though it's not clear if they're starters or just emergency subs, it is still pretty cool to see a couple of the EU old guard making a return, even if it is subtle for now. Now, to wrap things up, let's look ahead at what's happening. All dates and times are going to be in EST, so convert as needed. The Korea playoffs are going to be underway starting on September 7th at 4 a.m. FaceIt EMEA and NA will also be happening in just over a week on September 13th. But keep in mind, the early matches are likely only going to be co-streamed or visible through a player POV. So if you look for it on the OW Esports channels, you might end up missing them. And also, Stage 4 registration has opened up today for OWCS and NA and EU. So if that's something you're interested in, go make sure you sign up. Anyway, that's going to wrap things up here. If there's one thing you can take away from this, it's that the Overwatch esports scene is amazing to watch right now. Like, yes, there are still a lot of unknowns with the scene, but from a viewer perspective, you have a meta that's constantly in flux, so many close games, big upsets. Like, it's a perfect viewing experience, and I really, really recommend that you try to catch these games if you can. But in the case that you can't catch them, that's why I'm going to try and be here for you. So thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed. See you next time. Take care. Hey, if you're still watching, I just want to say thanks for staying this long. It's my first time trying this kind of content on my channel, but if you like it, please let me know and I'd love to make more. I normally do just like normal streams and random gameplay challenges, but Overwatch Esports is always going to be something I'm super passionate about. So I'd love to contribute to the community if I can, and hopefully this kind of helps do that. If there's any news that I missed or something specific you'd like to see, make sure to share it down below and I'll give my 2 cents. And of course, if you have any like feedback, advice, constructive criticism, I would love to hear it, as I'm always looking to grow as a creator, and any kind of support or feedback is very much appreciated. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Much love.